Welcome to the Horror Hive channel, where the darkness and unknown come alive. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an episode of terror. Let's dive into the darkness together. Wishful thinking. Michaela had always been an outsider in the small town of Ravenswood. She and her family had only recently moved there, and it was clear that they weren't welcome. Everyone in Ravenswood seemed to value natural beauty above all else, and Michaela couldn't help but feel self-conscious about her own appearance. She had always been self-conscious, but it was worse now that she was the new kid in town. Her classmates constantly teased her about her looks, and she could tell that they all thought she was ugly. One night, as she lay in bed, Michaela found herself wishing that all of her classmates' worst fears about their own physical insecurities would come true. She didn't know why she had that thought, but it seemed to have a powerful effect on her. The next morning, Michaela wakes up to a world where her classmates' worst fears have indeed come true. Their once perfect faces and bodies are now marred by deformities and disfigurements. As she makes her way to school, Michaela is horrified to see that the entire town has been affected by her wish. Everywhere she looks, there are people with twisted limbs, missing eyes, and twisted mouths. She tries to tell her classmates that she had nothing to do with their new appearances, but they are too terrified and disgusted to listen. As the days pass, Michaela realizes that she is the only one who has not been affected by her wish. Her classmates and the townspeople begin to blame her for their new appearances, and she is forced to flee for her life. As she runs through the forest, Michaela is hunted by the twisted and deformed townsfolk. They blame her for their new appearance and want to take revenge. She stumbles upon a cave in the forest and hides there, but they find her. She tries to fight back, but they are too strong. As they close in on her, Michaela realizes that she had brought this upon herself and her classmates and that she is responsible for the town's new appearance. She accepts her fate and closes her eyes, waiting for the end. But just as the townsfolk are about to grab her, she disappears and wakes up in her bed. She looks in the mirror and sees that her face and body are normal, and she is relieved. But as she goes outside, she sees the twisted and deformed townspeople and she starts to scream. She finds out that her wish had not been a dream, but a reality. From now on, she is the only normal person in a town of monsters, and she will never be able to leave. The Lost Children. The small town of Ravenswood was known for its picturesque landscapes and friendly community. But beneath the surface, a dark secret lurked. For years, local children had been disappearing without a trace. It began with the disappearance of young Timmy Evans, who vanished while playing in the woods behind his house. Despite an extensive search, no trace of the boy was ever found. Over the years, more children went missing, each one disappearing in the same mysterious manner. The townspeople tried to ignore the disappearances, dismissing them as runaways or accidents. But as the number of missing children continued to grow, the town's residents began to feel a sense of unease. They knew something was wrong, but no one wanted to believe that their idyllic community could harbor such a terrible secret. One day, a new family moved into town. The Millers were outsiders, and they were not welcomed with open arms. The townspeople whispered that they were responsible for the missing children, that they had somehow lured the kids into the woods and taken them for their own twisted purposes. But the miller's daughter, a young girl named Samantha, knew the truth. She had seen the monsters that lurked in the woods, the creatures that had taken her new friends. She knew that the townspeople were right to be afraid, but she also knew that they were wrong about her family. Samantha tried to tell her parents what she had seen, but they dismissed her as a child with an overactive imagination. But she knew the truth, and she was determined to make the townspeople believe her. One night, Samantha snuck out of her house and ventured into the woods. She knew the monsters were out there, and she was determined to find them. But as she crept deeper into the forest, she realized that she was not alone. The monsters were out there, and they were looking for her. The monsters surrounding the town were not just any wild animals. They were creatures of the night, with long and razor-sharp claws, glowing red eyes, and a hunger for human flesh. Samantha ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the creatures gaining on her, their twisted, inhuman cries growing louder. She knew she had to find a way to escape, or she would be the next child to vanish into the woods. As she stumbled through the darkness, she saw a glimmer of light in the distance. She ran towards it, hoping it was the way out. But as she emerged from the woods, she realized that the light was coming from a group of torches. The townspeople had come to search for her, and they had brought the monsters with them. Samantha's screams echoed through the night, as the monsters closed in on her. And in that moment, she knew that she would never be coming home. The town was never the same after that night, the lost children were never found, and the mysterious disappearances continued for many years. Some say that the creatures still lurk in the woods, waiting for their next victim. And some say that if you listen closely on a quiet night, you can still hear the screams of the lost children. The children's game. It was a typical suburban neighborhood, with well-manicured lawns and white picket fences. But there was something off about the street where the Johnson family had just moved into. The children who lived there seemed to always be playing a game, but no one knew what it was. At first, Michael and his sister Samantha were excited to join in on the fun. But as they approached the group of kids, they realized that something was not right. The children had dark circles under their eyes and their skin was pale. They didn't speak, only gestured for the newcomers to join the game. The game was simple, it was hide and seek. But as the night went on, it became clear that the stakes were much higher than they had imagined. The children were not playing to be found, they were playing to stay hidden. And if they were found, they would be taken away by the creatures that lurked in the shadows. Michael and Samantha soon realized that the creatures were not of this world. They had elongated limbs and razor-sharp teeth. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and their screams sent shivers down the spine. The children who were taken were never seen again. The siblings tried to leave the game, to run back to the safety of their home, but the creatures seemed to be everywhere. They were trapped in the twisted reality of the children's game. As the siblings stumbled through the dark, abandoned playground, they could hear the monsters closing in on them. The sister, Samantha, was holding tightly onto her brother's hand, trying to keep up with his quick pace. They had been playing the children's game for what felt like hours, with no end in sight. The monsters had been chasing them the whole time, their twisted, grotesque forms getting closer and closer with each passing moment. The brother, Michael, had always been the brave one, always willing to take on the monsters head-on. But as they reached the center of the playground, he could see the fear in Samantha's eyes. He knew they couldn't outrun the monsters forever. With a fierce determination, Michael turned to face the creatures, pushing Samantha behind him. "Stay back," he growled, brandishing a broken piece of playground equipment as a makeshift weapon. The monsters lurched forward, their twisted faces twisted in anger and hunger. Michael fought with all his might, but there were too many of them. Samantha watched in horror as her brother was overwhelmed and dragged away into the darkness. She screamed his name, tears streaming down her face as she heard his screams fade into silence. The monsters turned their attention to her, and she knew she was next. Samantha fought with all her might, but it was no use. The monsters were too strong, too relentless. As they closed in on her, she could only think of her brother and how she would never see him again. The last thing Samantha saw was the twisted, grotesque faces of the monsters as they consumed her. She was just another victim of the children's game, a deadly game that claimed the lives of countless innocent children. We hope you enjoyed our journey into the world of horror. We strive to bring you the best in horror entertainment, and we appreciate your support. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of terror. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in our next story.